Good evening, everyone. I am so glad that you have made time today to be a part of this important webinar. We're all learning. We're learning as we go, and I'm just grateful to the folks around this virtual room that will help us learn more about how to make our properties more missionally focused, and while at the same time maximizing the property that we do have, especially when it is unused. So I'm grateful to Melissa Mayer, to Will Reed, and Robert Besser, who have worked so hard to get us to this point as we begin to explore some of the possibilities that might be before us. I am going to offer a word of prayer, then I'm going to mute and I'm going to learn. I've got a pen in hand and my notebook and ready to take some great notes. And I know that we're all going to learn here together. So if I could open us in a word of prayer. Most gracious God, for this day, we give you thanks and for the privilege that we have to gather around this virtual table. We know, oh God, that we've got an incredible assets all over all of these 50-something counties across Texas that might actually be useful not just to us, but to the communities that we live in and to the kingdom, to your kingdom, oh God. So we just ask you to bless our time as we all learn together what the possibilities might be, some that we've thought of, some that we've never thought of. So I just place this time before you and give you thanks for gathering us here this evening. All this I pray in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Bishop, and welcome to everyone. We have somewhere close to 250 folks that have responded, and so we have heard you that this is a need, and what we hope to offer tonight will be the beginning of a conversation, several resources. Let me give you a couple of housekeeping things. If you have a question along the way, we're going to save a little bit of time at the end of the webinar in order to take questions for all of our panelists. So if you have a question, feel free as we go through the webinar to put that in the Q&A section. You'll see a button there at the bottom. Go ahead and write that down and capture it. We will answer as many of them as we can live tonight, and then we'll be in touch after the webinar. We'll also be sharing there in the Q&A a link just to make sure, even if you didn't register, we want to capture your email address so that we can be in touch with you and share the resources tonight. So those are the housekeeping things. How did we get to this point? Well, last fall, we had several of our pastors in the annual conference who were all wrestling with their church physical property and what to do next. Everything from land that was being underutilized, vacant land, to an aging church property where the debt was too much for the congregation to bear, to those who had really seen an opportunity to partner with community partners. So, because you said we are in connection, we don't want to try to work this problem in isolation. Thanks to congregations in our annual conference, we have now pulled together. We had an opportunity to meet with some of the panelists that you'll hear from today and the excellent ministry that they offer to you. Let me just say a little bit about the why of this webinar tonight. Brent Mills will be sharing a slide that has some of those kind of the reason I would imagine that you signed up to participate tonight. We are not the only denomination that is going through this change in the times. Right now, many of us have underutilized space inside or outside the building, and we'll try to talk about that today. Aging property is quite expensive, and making decisions about our property is often a complex and a highly emotional decision. And so what we want to do as your annual conference staff is resource you with the expertise in order to make some of the complex decisions, but to also give you language and permission to your congregation to say, this is a hard decision. This is an emotional decision. but we want to be able to equip you in order to utilize property for the benefit of the community. Several of us have been reading many articles. In 2021, just in Dallas and the Houston area, 51 religious properties were sold. Now that's just in the Dallas and Houston markets. If you go back a little ways to 2015, nearly $1.3 billion, $1.3 billion representing 1,500 church properties were sold just in that calendar year. Jesus tells a parable about what has been placed in our hands, and then what will we do with it? Will we put it into stewardship, into the care of the community and God's economy, or will we bury our heads in the sand or bury that gift? What we want to do tonight is equip you with information to get the conversation started so that you can take the next step as a pastor, as a trustee, as the lay leader. We won't be able to cover everything tonight, but what we're going to do is we're going to hit some of the highlights. And then we are here for you, your annual conference staff, to help guide you in this conversation.
Will Reed is on our team here in the conference office, Reverend Dr. Will Reed. And he's also a specialist in a whole lot of other areas, including insurance and property. And so, Will, why don't you take it over from here?
Welcome, friends and colleagues. I'm going to be leading the last section, and I want to tell you a little bit about some other resources that we've identified to help churches create revenue beyond the offering plate. But the first thing I want to do is to encourage each of you to think about your church property as a valued asset, an asset that can be utilized in new ways for kingdom work. So think about what are the needs of your community and how can your church building or church property be reimagined or be repurposed to address those needs in some way. How can the needs of the larger community around you be addressed using your church facility? For example, when I served as senior pastor at First United Methodist Church in Pasadena, we redeveloped a portion of our facility to serve as a licensed residence to serve up to 36 youth in foster care who did not have a permanent placement. And we became aware of this issue, this need, when the TV news in Houston broadcast photos of children and youth sleeping on pallets in a Houston CPS office. And so with a small grant, we repurposed some restrooms in an underutilized area of our building to include showers, and then secured a state license and a provider relationship along with a recurring monthly rental contract to provide housing for those in foster care without a permanent placement. Another church that I served had a homeless ministry that was organized as a separate 501c3 nonprofit. And that nonprofit also paid a monthly rate to utilize the kitchen, storage space, and other building resources. I do know that several of our Texas conference already collaborate with other nonprofits and community partners to both lease space to them and to work together on addressing community needs. But as I think about that, I also remember a conversation that I had several years ago with Pastor Rudy Rasmus at St. John's downtown before Rudy and Juanita retired. And we were talking about serving the needs of a community. And he reminded me that there are many other nonprofit organizations that are already doing well. That one thing that our church or our community may see as a need. And since they already do it well, he said, partner with them, structure the relationship to cover the cost of doing what they do in your church space. And friends, that's collaborative kingdom work. And it often creates revenue above expenses. Several of our churches are doing that kind of thing. And several of our churches are also looking for ways to rent and monetize their property. Some of them have done that with charter schools and other nonprofits. Some others have done that with small businesses. But first, it's important to carefully review the current use of your buildings and property. For example, what percentage of your buildings and property are utilized each week? If all the square feet in your building were accounted for say 40 hours a week, what percentage of that space and time is used by the church? For example, if you have a 10,000 square foot building. Calculate how many hours of time the church actually uses each square foot of that space over a typical 40-hour week. So if you had 10,000 square feet times 40 hours, you have 400,000 square feet of space available for rent each week. Most of our churches use that space less than 10% of the time. And yet churches pay insurance, maintenance, debt service, utilities, and other expenses on all the space all the time. And all the annual costs calculated together can create an hourly rate per square foot that your building costs your local church. So how can you rent and monetize that property to get some of those dollars back for other kingdom work? Finally, a number of our churches, our Texas Conference churches, have sold property so that they can right-size their property and buildings so they can relocate or even replant their church. Some have sold properties that they're not using. But remember, anytime you sell a piece of property, you are forever eliminating the possibility of creating recurring monthly revenue. So if you're thinking about selling your property, I think it's very important to have a plan going forward. And first question to ask yourself is, could this property create monthly recurring revenue for our church? Or if we sell it, how can our church reinvest those dollars in new kingdom work that creates monthly recurring revenue? So think about your property decisions and how do they align with your strategic ministry plan for the church, and how do they meet the needs of the community going forward? These are just a few of the questions that you must consider. Now, here in the Texas Annual Conference, we've identified 2 real estate firms that we've interviewed and vetted that can help with some of this. Both of these are also vetted with the denomination's General Council on Finance and Administration. The first is a company called Foundry Commercial. If you were to click on the PowerPoint, you'd find the link, but it's foundrycommercial.com, and the link is also available in a resource page that we have now uploaded to the website with the information about today's webinar. Foundry Commercial has a religious nonprofit and education group that helps churches think through the development possibilities of their properties. Things like affordable housing, things like nonprofit incubators. They help you manage your property. They can work with you to retrofit a building for a new purpose that meets your kingdom goals and creates potential revenue streams. One of our TAC churches had just recently begun a consulting relationship with Foundry. Now, another one is Wesley Community Development, wesleycdc.com. Wesley CDC is an affiliated ministry of the Western North Carolina Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. And Wesley CDC was originally started in 2002 by the annual conference there with a $1.5 million grant from the Duke Endowment. Wesley is now a full-service nonprofit real estate firm that helps churches and faith-based organizations reimagine, repurpose, and redevelop their physical assets. One of the things they do is to help churches fully think through and understand and develop kingdom building possibilities for their property. In the 20 years since they were first started, they have co-developed over $130 million in real estate projects. Some of our churches have begun working with Wesley, and the Texas Annual Conference is considering the possibility of replicating some of their models here. Now, we also have some other churches that are utilizing the skills and talents of other firms. For instance, First United Methodist Church Huntsville and First United Methodist Church in Dickinson are working with a commercial real estate company called JLL.com. Also, there is a nationally known organization called Sacred Places for Sacred Spaces that has been able to help churches access funding for the renovation and preservation of historic buildings. There are resources out there specifically for funding the renovation and preservation of historic buildings, and Sacred Places for Sacred Spaces can help you access those resources. In the resource link that you will receive on our website, there are links to every one of these organizations. Also, there may be local firms that you are aware of that can assist you in thinking through your options. All of you know real estate folks and developers that do this kind of work. Also, in the resource document that we put online are some links to some articles that have appeared recently. And in each of these articles, there are links to churches and firms that are doing creative things with their properties. One of the resources that we have included there is related to the IRS topic of unrelated business income for nonprofits. One of the articles is from the IRS, and the other is from the General Counsel and Finance and Administrations. And one of the things that you need to be aware of is that sometimes income from collaborative ventures may be considered unrelated business income. And an exempt organization can be taxed on that unrelated business income. That's called UBIT, unrelated business income tax. And the IRS defines unrelated business income in this way. It's in their document, which we put in the resource guide. It says unrelated business income is the income from a trade or business regularly conducted by an exempt organization and not substantially related to the performance by the organization of its exempt purpose or function. It says use by the organization of the profits derived from this activity does not alone make the activity substantially related to the performance by the organization of its exempt purpose or function. So a collaborative ministry with another nonprofit organization that creates rental income would probably be a related business. But if, for instance, you were to put a tire store on your property, that would more than likely not be treated as unrelated business income. That would be taxable as unrelated business, and you would be subject to unrelated business income tax. We've included the IRS document on unrelated business income tax as one of the resources in our resource guide. One last resource that I want to bring your attention to is that the resource on the resource page is a link to the University United Methodist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. University Church is doing some really creative things with their property and have also created a separate full-service premium coffee company that services events. Double Flag Coffee is wholly owned by the church, and it operates out of a 20-foot mobile trailer that they built out with an initial grant. It is now located full-time at the Tulsa Fairgrounds and is expected to generate well over $150,000 in revenue above expenses for the ministries and mission of the church this year. Some of the revenue above expenses they're going to use in 2024 to create some additional coffee trailers that can be placed in other locations around Tulsa or moved to events and programs that create crowds. University UMC also rents out almost all of their church space, and renters include nonprofits and artists, small business owners, and a person who is running for elected office. Pastors Matt Austin and Matt Patrick, the two Matts as they call themselves, are creating a video that describes more about the business ventures of their church, and it should be available in the next couple of weeks. And when they send me the link, I will share it with you. Well, friends, that is all that I have on my list to talk about. If you need any additional information about any of these resources, send me an email with your contact information, and I will get back to you.
At this time, I'm going to invite my friend and colleague, Reverend Jill Daniel.
Thanks, Melissa. I am so excited to be with you all this evening. Again, thank you for coming. I'd also like to tag on to Melissa's why. So why we love all God's children. Well, friends, I'll tell you this, that early childhood is a crucial period of growth and development that lays the foundation for a child's future and well-being. Quality early education programs nurture children holistically by supporting their cognitive, social, emotional, physical, and spiritual advancement. However, access to such impactful opportunities remains inequitable. I want to briefly preface the specifics of We Love All God's Children by sharing with you the need for affordable excellence in early childhood education and care. Decades of scientific study have unequivocally proven that investing in a child's early years yields tremendous returns. High-quality early education care programs have been conclusively linked to higher graduation rates, greater career achievements, better health outcomes, decreased costs to society that are related to incarceration, welfare and poverty, and an overall more productive adult population. Early learning establishes the cognitive, self-regulation, and socio-emotional skills required for lifelong learning and development. It also helps close opportunity and achievement gaps that often persist in and go into adulthood if left unaddressed early on. Now, despite its proven benefits, access to quality early learning programs remain inequitable, especially in the United States, and specifically here in our home state of Texas. An analysis of this fragmented system reveals problems, those like exorbitant cost of childcare, putting it out of reach for most average American families. It's so unfortunate. And if left unaddressed, these inequities threaten to undermine, well, the country's competitiveness, our prosperity, our social cohesion for generations to come. Reformers in the past recognized the transformative power of education and its potential to uplift marginalized communities. Our own John Wesley established pioneering schools in the 18th century that embodied his vision that education is a right, not a privilege. Back in the 18th century, he started initiatives like the Gray Coat School and Kingwood School, where he sought to provide rigorous academic programs paired with moral and spiritual development to underserved children, especially girls, by demonstrating how the church could address societal injustices. The Bible emphasizes Jesus' special concern for children as the most vulnerable members of society. When his disciples tried to dissuade them, Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me." Of course, he saw children as worthy of love, dignity, and care. As followers of Christ, part of our mission involves embracing responsibility towards society's most marginalized groups, ensuring that all children have nurturing environments that foster well-rounded growth aligns with biblical values. Of course, a core tenet of Christianity centers on caring for those in need. Throughout history, churches have established social services, hospitals, schools, and relief efforts to uplift underserved communities. Continuing this legacy, churches today, the United Methodist Church specifically, we're uniquely poised to advocate for policies and programs enabling affordable excellence in early childhood learning and caring programs, to establish sustainable solutions that realize early education's potential benefits at scale. Collaborative efforts are required across all sectors: public, private, nonprofit, and faith-based. By the power of the Holy Spirit and with a shared commitment and vision, affordable excellence can become the new norm to empower the next generation. We Love All God's Children is an initiative of the Texas Annual Conference that was rolled out in 2018. Our mission is to change the trajectory of the lives of underserved, and unchurched children and families through a holistic approach that includes discipleship, early literacy, and health. One of the most transformational and successful ministries of We Love All God's Children has been the opening of our United Methodist Children's Centers in partnership with local congregations. Our centers are full-day, full-year operations. Some were the typical 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. part-time schools, where congregations realized that this model of part-time care was no longer the most effective way to serve their communities. Most have been new startup operations, serving children from 6 weeks of age through elementary age. Most serve all ages, but some of our centers are after-school centers, serving only school-age children. Some United Methodist Children's Centers serve meals and snacks, while others serve snacks and require families to send a meal for lunch. In order to determine the best manner of fulfilling the need in each unique ministry setting, We Love All God's Children works with the church to take a deep dive into the demographics and other statistics to aid in the discernment. Let me say 2 very important pieces to this. First, this is a ministry of the local church. We'll be there and walk alongside you to help you in whatever way that we can, but it's the local church's ministry. It's also, in essence, a small business. We're not looking for church volunteers to come in and staff a school that's open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The church engages in hiring a director and hiring staff to come, and that director is under the guidance of the senior pastor, the church leadership team, or whichever way that the church decides is the best way to supervise and oversee that ministry. Once We Love All God's Children enters into a covenant relationship with the local church, the process to move toward fulfilling the church's vision of operating a center begins. But with church finances as the basis of our meeting today, let's get right to answering the big question. How much will this cost us? The good news is that We Love All God's Children pays for most everything related to opening a center. From the first box of crayons to the largest pieces of playground equipment, your church has the support to open a state-of-the-art early education and care center. We even help with revisions that need to be made to your building. In order to assist your center in building a strong, solid financial foundation, we'll even pay the salary of the director for 4 to 6 months, along with the first quarter of salaries for your staff, including those tax liabilities. With all the expenses paid for the first quarter of childcare being open, all income there serves as the basis to lay that solid financial foundation. In addition, we will take care of the licensing process with the Texas Department of Health and Human Service, assisting in developing partnerships as well with such entities as Texas Workforce Solution and the USDA Food Service. Texas Workforce Solution, their program of child care subsidies, will assist you or assist your parents in paying for the services for child care. Texas Workforce Commission will take on parents and families and pay their child care bills directly to the church. If a parent is working, is in a job search program, in a training program, or in college or high school, they'll meet those qualifications if they fit the standard free or reduced lunch income guidelines in the state of Texas. The USDA Food Service will provide the food and pay for someone to prepare that food and serve it for you, becoming part of their program as well. Both of these 2 partnerships provide an income stream that is invaluable, both to being successful financially and in reaching a broader population desperately in need of services. I'll share with you that one of our schools that had opened just before COVID hit, they were paid for all of their children for the 7 months that they were closed during COVID, which allowed them to be able to retain all of their employees and pay their employees during that whole 7 months that they were off. We Love All God's Children will also walk alongside your board in developing policies, procedures, and job descriptions that benefit the long-term success of your centers. And we stick with you along that journey. In addition, we also provide quality staff development for your employees, along with providing them the highest rated early childhood curriculum for daily use in the classroom. The curriculum that we recommend follows the Early Childhood Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills Standards. That's Texas Education Association's gold standard for kindergarten readiness. Prior to your opening, We Love All God's Children will assist in marketing your school through a variety of methods. One highly successful marketing tool that we've used in the past is to sponsor an outreach event such as Spring Break Camp, in which We Love All God's Children provides everything necessary to host children and parents on your campus at no cost to the church. Friends, I am readily available to come to your town, to meet with your church, to discuss your vision for serving the children in your community, and for a walkthrough of your facilities to determine its viability as a licensed childcare center. My email and my cell number are listed on the screen. I look forward to hearing from all of you, and I can't wait to see what God has in store for your church and our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. Friends, let me say that Jill's purpose in being here is to share with you that if your church, regardless of the size, small, baby size, small church, medium, large, whatever size of church, anywhere in the conference that has classroom space available during the week, meaning Monday through Friday, that the classrooms are not being used. Many of our churches find that to be the case. Many towns have children that need a loving place for childcare. Jill's We Love All God's Children, as the director, is able to help your church be in partnership with the state of Texas. The state of Texas and the partnerships of the organizations through the state will help fund this. It's a ministry of the church, but the funding for it comes through the parents and also through the state. If you know, over the last 3 years, many of the licensed preschools and day schools in the state have closed. And so the state is begging for facilities to be open. Our churches, many of our churches, are closed Monday through Saturday in the classroom space, meaning that there's no one there Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday. Jill and her team is able to help you with your church to find a ministry that will meet the needs and pay the bills. Many of the churches that have a preschool that Jill has worked with, the preschool helps to fund the ministries and the expenses of the church. So thank you, Jill, for offering your service and being willing to travel anywhere in the conference for any church who has classroom space available for a preschool to be in ministry with the state of Texas. I want to move over next to outside the church. So Jill was talking about inside the church property, classroom space. Now I want to talk with Matt Kingsbury and Drew Barrett. Both of them are with Park Thrive. And so let's talk about if your church has property or outside the church facility. Welcome, Matt and Drew.
Thank you very much for having us. Robert, if you'd be so kind as to stop sharing, so I'll share our updated version. Thank you. The joys of Zoom. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you again for having us and for that intro, Robert. To introduce myself, I'm Matt and joined by Drew, and we're the founders of Park Thrive. We're a pretty new addition to the UMC support as of this fall, and we're grateful for the opportunity to be here and talk to you guys about parking. So what we'll cover today is what we can do to help you unlock the revenue that's in your parking lot right now in a way that's consistent with your goals and your mission of your ministry. We'll talk through some good examples of demand for parking, if that's something that is on your mind and trying to figure out how to quantify that. We'll then talk through the process of getting started with us, go through a few case studies of churches and what we've seen them do, and then cover some Q&As that we often get at the end. So what do we do? Basically, we work with small and medium-sized organizations and a lot of churches. And what we do is basically if anyone has parking that they're not using 24/7 in a place that there's demand for parking, we make it seamless for them to make revenue from that parking lot in a way that they feel good about, basically. We have a suite of different services that can be customized and deployed. We have our own custom-built software to make it easy to accept payment for parking. We have our own custom signage that we manufacture and install for free. We have a number of different enforcement solutions. And perhaps most importantly, we have a small dedicated team that's here to help you guys fulfill your needs and your goals when it comes to your parking and revenue goals. Some good stuff about us is that there are no upfront costs to use us. There's no leases or commitments, and you maintain control of your parking. So, your needs will change when it comes to parking. You might sign up with a certain set of goals and a certain schedule, and that will change, and that's fine. And we're here to help you help support you every step of the way with that. So, demand drivers. You all know your locations best, and you probably already have a sense if there's demand for parking in your area. That said, a good question to think about is if whether or not you've ever had someone park without permission in your location or with permission. If the answer to that is yes, then there's probably a need for more parking in your community, and you can offer that parking. People will probably pay for it, and everyone can win. So a few examples of demand drivers that we've seen in general and for churches are, of course, event parking. We call that sort of the Taylor Swift effect. We've had some churches that have done very well when Taylor Swift has come to town, as you would imagine. That's an interesting case because it can be permanent signage or just signage that is put out to facilitate or aid with whatever you need to do to help raise revenue from that specific event. There's college town parking as well. College students are always looking for places to keep their cars for medium and long-term periods of time for a small fee. Of course, restaurant parking as well. If you have a church that's located in a business district and there's bars and restaurants, there might just be need for people to pay for parking for an hour or two on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. We find a lot of locations do very well with that. And finally, like residential parking as well, just like college towns, some places need cars to, places to put their cars for medium or long terms if they don't have enough parking for their car near their home. One other example, which we didn't include here, is also vacant land or property that's in between uses. So for example, if a property is vacant or not being used, even for a short time, we work with a number of locations to help monetize that, monetize the parking in that, even for, 3-4 months at a time. So no two locations or congregations are the same, and we know that. And we have a number of different, basically customizable solutions that we can help deploy for you based on your specific needs. We have a small team of account executives that we'll introduce you to later on a slide and they're really experienced working with churches and a number of different creative needs of parking, and they can really help craft a solution that fits your needs. So here are a couple different use cases for paid parking. So the first would be enabling hourly or daily parking when your church is not using a lot specifically. Another would be issuing paper violations or logging digital violations so that we can send invoices or bills in the mail to people on your behalf. We always hesitate to explain that one in a church setting, but the truth is that we have found some churches who are really excited to go ahead and do the enforcement, and some that want to be much more hands-off. And we like to put it out there as an example of all the different solutions that we can deploy for you. Other examples are issuing weekly or monthly parking passes for locals or people in the area. That has the benefit of creating steady, dependable monthly income, which is some people's goals. And then finally, we can streamline operations and help you take advantage of our relationship with the UMC and our exclusive revenue share to help you make more money off any of your existing parking operations if you're already doing it. So in short, we just have a lot of different tools at our disposal to help you with your goals wherever they may lie. So getting started with us is pretty simple. Our goal is to help you do as much or as little work as you want to do to monetize your lot in alignment with your goals, like we were saying. So all someone has to do is express interest. Then someone from the congregation will set up our software system, and that's how the software can automatically do payouts on a weekly basis. We work with you to figure out what your needs are, and then we'll send you a proposal, which includes a proposal for what the signage will look like in your lot. Then once you approve that, we send someone to install that signage for free. We do that on our side, and you just give the go-ahead, and someone will show up and put up the signs. And then after that, with a paid parking scenario, drivers will come in, they'll follow the signage, and they can pay to park. On the left here, you can see just a mock-up of what a sign could look like at a Methodist location. If the screen is clear enough and you are interested, you can go ahead and scan that QR code and get a sense of what a driver would experience if they pulled into a lot and were using our software system. So I'll leave that for a second. I have some other good screenshots on the next page as well. So a core part of what we do is we have our own custom-built software, and this is made specifically for small and medium-sized organizations. A couple key parts about this is that there's a back-end dashboard where owners and managers, whoever is in charge of the lot, can easily go in, adjust settings, turn the parking lot on and off, raise pricing, lower pricing, whatever you want to do. We also have multiple logins, so you can have someone log in from their phone and easily check plates in the lot if you want to do that. And from the driver's side, our whole thing is making it super, super easy to do the right thing and pay to park. I would imagine everyone here has had the experience of pulling up to pay for parking and be encountered with the instruction to download a brand new app to your phone and then set up a whole new account and then add payments methods and all these things, which is very frustrating. And we've specifically designed our software so people can pay for parking with as few clicks as possible on their phone and make it easy for them to do the right thing. The last thing I'll mention on this is that we are also here. Our team is here to support you guys too. So our system is designed to make it really easy for anyone who is the manager of the lot to set up all the systems the way they want to, but we are also always here to make tweaks on your behalf as well. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Drew, to talk a little bit more about some case studies.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, and kind of as Matt mentioned, I would say it's probably like 90% of organizations or companies heavily lean on us for full assistance of it. And then we get about 10% of, you call them like a power user that you want to be running it, managing it. And I think the theme with all of this is it essentially is what you want. So I think what we want to also show everybody here today are just like two interesting ways to consider maybe a scenario that you might have, or just something that might spur an idea of like, oh yeah, we do have something like that. Maybe it's not your traditional like hourly parking to go to the store, right? Pay for 2 hours, $4 and go over there. Maybe you have some other friction in your property right now, or there's some just some scenario going on that you had never really thought of, like, oh, paid parking could actually fix that, and there's a chance that it actually could. So here's a couple different case studies to share with everyone. We were reached out to from a church in Eugene, Oregon, a couple years ago, and they're right on a college campus, and they were happy to provide parking to college students, but it was, let's say, getting a little out of control, and there was maybe a little bit of politeness lacking, students parking their vehicles all over the place, very unorganized, very chaotic, and they were looking to have a bit more structure to it, right? Where students could park, when they could park there, how long they could leave their vehicles there for, and because, of course, the property is being used, there is upkeep that's associated with that. So we worked with this location to essentially put together a plan with them on how to handle paid hourly student parking. And something that, at times can be a bit more of a contentious scenario between a church on a student campus with students parking everywhere, and the church itself. It actually now is a really healthy relationship where everyone who's parking there knows when they can do it, and they're happy to pay the small fee to continue to have that use of the lot. So that is a scenario in which we've seen where we actually are fixing something that is valuable to the people in the area, and actually has made the lives of the churchgoers much better, as there's less confusion with when and how the lot can be used. So that's a good example of something where you have a demand driver, but you haven't yet monetized what the demand driver is. On the flip side, we work with numbers of locations that have had pre-existing paid parking, whether that's been managed by a professional company and you've let the third party manage it, or a lot of times what we see in church scenarios is you have volunteers that are running the lot for you. This is great, when you have a great big pool of volunteers and everyone's happy to do it. This church that we're working with in Nashville, Tennessee, is right by a big stadium, and for all of the big sporting events, they traditionally had a ton of volunteers, and over the years, those volunteers have waned and waned and waned, and it's become more and more difficult to get enough staff to, let's say, man a 200 car lot on a big sporting event game day. And what we were able to do with these guys is come in and assist them with technology that now they could have either no one, or let's say one person, manage an entire lot themselves because the technology was assisting them. But not only that, they're now, easily monetizing all of those game day parking. They'd never really thought of also getting volunteers to do concert parking, allow vehicles to park there during the week when they actually never had any volunteers, and people are parking, going to some different exercise classes and businesses in the area. So this not only helped kind of replace that waning labor that they didn't have available to them through less and less volunteers, but also opened up an additional revenue stream for them. So all I would say to everybody on here is, don't just think, very simple, straightforward, like, oh, it's parking during the day or not. There's very different scenarios that you can have. And I would say, if you have something where you're like, this is going on in my lot, is there a way to control this better, or a way to make money off of this? Please, please, please reach out to us. It can be sometimes worth, let's say, $800 a month to your congregation. It could be worth upwards of $20,000 a month, depending on what we're seeing and what the scenario is. So just to give everybody a couple big FAQs that we tend to get asked, how's the pricing work, right? You guys are doing this for free. We're not paying anything. We're not signing any contracts. How does it work? We are free to use, and there's never any contracts. There's never any fees paid from you to us. We have put together an exclusive pricing structure for the all Methodist congregations that's lower than anything else that we're able to offer anywhere else. What we're able to do is we are giving an 85% revenue share to the church of the parking, and we do everything for you. So let's say you were charging for event pricing, it was $40 for that event, $34 goes to the church, and we run all operations, all upkeep, continued maintenance, and everything for that 15% share. So very simple and straightforward. If we're able to make you more money, we also make more money, and the alignment and the incentives are very good. This 85% is typically much lower than around the 50% revenue share that let's say a parking management company would typically offer someone. I think this is probably the most common question. I think we might cover it later from another speaker, but can a church offer paid parking? Absolutely, yes. We do it all over the country. There's people that are much better at speaking to UBIT than I am, but we've seen it many times. And essentially, so long as the revenue of parking isn't becoming a majority of your revenue for the church, it's not a problem. And we're happy to speak to people if you have any concerns around nonprofit designation and whatnot. We've found a solution for everybody that's been motivated to work with us. And then what if I'm already doing paid parking? Should I even speak to you guys? And I would say like it wouldn't hurt. We've seen many people who either are just tired of managing it themselves, and we can really give them a lot of support in making it, less time and less effort on their end. On the flip side, if you are working, let's say, with a professionally managed company, most of the time we're able to put a lot more money in your pocket and also give your customers as good or better of a service than they're currently receiving. So always worth a call or a chat if you have any sort of parking operations already going on in your congregation. And then we just like to put some faces to the company. We're a nationwide company. If you ever call in, you'll see one of these people pick up the phone. Very knowledgeable. As Matt mentioned before, if you do end up working with us, you'll probably work with every single one of these people throughout the process and the ongoing relationship, whether it's, Gene, Hannah, and Devin as they're helping set up and design your lot, or Dylan and Josh when they're, helping with you with the ongoing operations. And as I said before, we are an organization that is typically heavily leaned on. A lot of people offload it and they say, please just do this. I'll email you if I want anything, run it for me. But on the flip side, we're happy to train up people if you're having someone manage it or wanting to be more involved in it yourself. So that's the end of our quick, exciting parking presentation. I'm sure that's the most excited that anyone's ever been about parking. And if you're totally jazzed up after this, feel free to give us a call, give us an email. Our information's on the slide. And I think it'll be sent out afterwards. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Drew. And yes, everyone who registered will get the recording of tonight's presentation and also all the slides. And we'll talk more about that at the end of our session for tonight. Drew, let me make sure I understand. So if a church had parking availability and you talk with you or Matt or your team talk with the church, it's free for them. You pay for all the signage. You're able to handle all of the behind the scenes aspect. And then the church just gets the check in the mail or 85% of whatever the cost associated with that.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's a weekly direct deposit to the bank account of 85% of the parking base price. So if you charge it $10 for a parker, $8.50 goes to your bank account, and we do all the setup, the upkeep, and as Matt kind of mentioned, right, it's non-contractual. So we always say, someone might say, oh, this is risky, I don't want to try it out. Honestly, the biggest risk is not giving it a try, because if you put it up and you hate it after a week, you take it down and it's no loss to you. That doesn't happen, but it is just a zero risk on the church's side to consider or try this out.
Fantastic. Thank you, Drew, and thank you, Matt, for both being here and for the ministry that y'all provide to churches across the nation. So friends, we have talked about inside the church, classroom space that would be available. We have just talked with Matt and Drew about parking lot. If you had space available in the parking lot. Now we're going to move to SteepleCom, and Tom Moylan is going to join us. Tom, welcome. We're glad that you're here. You have a lot of information that you'd like to share as well. So we're going to turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you, Robert. And thank you, everybody. I'm looking at the numbers here and I'm like, there's 260 people on here. I don't know if I should be nervous or not, but I'll just get on going here. We have been doing business with the Methodist Church since 2005. I feel like I'm the gray beard because we've been dealing with this issue for such a long time. Way back, we were not AT&T knocked on the door of our church and they said, hey, we would like to be in our steeple. And so the church did what the church does, and it started a committee, and I got the short straw, so I had to deal with all of this stuff. So we did the transaction. It was really difficult, but we learned a lot of stuff. Fast forward, we started doing business with the New England Conference because I'm in Massachusetts. I'm here. We just got 10 inches of snow last night. And what had happened was that I called up, we had a meeting, and they said, we love what you're doing, but hey, you got to do you have to promise us one thing, you have to take care of all of our churches. So we started a company, signed a contract, and then we started taking care of 750 Methodist churches in New England to put cell towers on their property. We have learned a lot along the way, not the least of which is Methodist polity. We know our part, section 2541, in case anybody's looking for it, on how to lease church property. It's all covered in there. We know a district superintendent, charge conference, district committee on building locations. So half of what our job is to have churches understand what the rules of the church. So we walk in both worlds with the wireless folks and with the churches. But it's been quite a journey. We've learned a lot. So basically, the Methodist Church is set up perfectly for the way that we structure our business. We have been reactive. I like to, the world according to Moylan can be a scary place. So we've taken advantage of the way that the connectional nature of the Methodist Church, and that we have a relationship already with your conference. And basically what we've done is that we've done an analysis of all the church locations. Oh, there we go. We've done an analysis of all the locations within the conference. And what's interesting is that, you publish way more information from these things than you know. But now we're able to crowdsource, and we can take all those churches that we see right there, run an analysis on them, and then we can find out what places do AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and now Dish is coming. They've made a major announcement that they're gonna do 5,000 new sites in the next couple of years. So they're gonna release those 5,000 locations shortly. So we take those, and then we've done the analysis, and then after the analysis, next slide, please. Here we go, and now we have, those are pretty much the qualified churches within the conference. So we have a pretty good idea of what the carriers need. I always say, though, it's kind of like the Land of Oz, in that you never really know what's going on behind the curtain until they show you. But all of those locations, we have a pretty strong sense that there's something that the carriers need. How we structure our business is that, so we have an agreement with the conference, that's great. So we're able to do stuff on I hate the word, but it communicates, on a portfolio basis. So we take the churches and we bring them to the carriers and have them take a look and see what they need. Then if there is interest and the church is interested, then we need to put an agency agreement in place with us so that we have standing. We've had a couple of Zoom calls with your conference. And we'd like to, follow up on a lot of that stuff, where we have the churches identified. but more than anything else, it speaks to the carriers exactly that the church is at least interested in kicking the can down the road. The church is open to it. They've had a discussion because there's a lot of churches that talk about this, and I could write a book on all the. I mean, I have dealt with probably a couple thousand churches over the past 20 years in doing what we do, and there's just every church is unique, but they're all the same, in that there's a lot of tire kickers, I guess, is where we're going here. So this is an opportunity for once a church gets into our system, you will be in the carrier's friendly database, and you will be in there forever. You'll never go out. So the first place that they will look in the future is they'll go to the friendly database, and then if they have a capacity issue or a coverage issue, they'll see it, they'll call us, and then we start the process. An average process takes about 18 months from beginning to end, if all goes well. Things rarely go well because this is a highly regulated industry. So, but we have a system that works. It works really well with the way that the Methodist Church is owned. And we've got a really good track record. We have an open book. We do this all throughout the United States. The carriers like us. And we look forward to accelerating the progress that we've made with your churches to generate revenue in that fashion. I'm going to shift gears with you. Oh,
Hey, Tom, can I ask
yes,
a
sir.
question before you move on to your other areas? So if a church wants to talk with you about cell tower coverage with one of the carriers, how does that agreement work on the finances?
Very straightforward. We only get paid if the church gets paid. And once we do get paid, we have a most favored nation pricing thing that we've done with the Methodist Church that we don't negotiate because we can't tell one church one thing, one church another thing. But the local church gets 3/4 of the money that gets generated. A lot of times we will spend well over a year through the regulatory process, and then at the end it just doesn't work for whatever reason. And the church, we all take our toys and go home because that's just the nature. We do everything at risk, but some of the sites work out, so it's a worthy business environment.
So there's no risk to the church to have a conversation with you and then for you to meet with the carriers and see if it works out for that partnership to happen.
Correct. And like I said, it takes a long time. So like every question gets answered, but we have federal, state, local zoning, FAA, FCC. There's a lot of steps to it. So there's a lot of exit ramps throughout the process too. If it doesn't, like if there's a design, say the steeple won't work or rooftop will work, and it'll be a tower. I mean, we're doing a couple sites in Texas already, but they don't like the look of the tower. One of the jurisdictions, we're doing a site in Denton, Texas, and they want a pine tree. Doesn't matter what anybody else wants. The zoning people want it to look like a pine tree, so that's what we're going to do. But the church didn't want a pine tree, so they almost just bailed at the end. But they wanted the money, so they're going to have a pine tree.
Okay, thank you. All right, you want to move on to EV charging stations, or what's next?
There's some crazy stuff that has happened. So we've been doing this for such a long time. God has opened some pretty interesting doors for us as a response to COVID. So we've dealt with the GCFA from the beginning, and we got a call from them that said, "Is there anything else that we can do?" So there has been multiple doors that have opened, and they have been beautiful, and they have been easy, and they have been. I can't deny the hand of God in the work that we do. So now that we have done there are battery storage units. We're doing about two dozen of them in Massachusetts, and we took the same approach. So all this is, we're just replicating the same system. We take the group of churches, bring them to an interested party. So there are battery storage for resiliency within the electric grid. There's a company right now that's doing an analysis on it. It's about 40 of them, but that they have to deal with the utility. So they put battery storage in there. So it's kind of to get away from spikes in the demand for hot and cold in there. So basically what they've done is that so they have to interact with the utility. It takes a long time. The ones in Massachusetts that, I mean, and we've never done this before. It's taken 2 years, and now the utilities are finally coming back to say, yes, this is a good location. That's a qualified location for capacity for them. So that's another opportunity. And out of that, EV charging seems to have raised its head for all sorts of stuff. So I was fortunate enough to have a chat with the woman that's in charge of EV charging for the Department of Energy. And she explained to me how everything goes. Basically, EV charging is the wild, wild west. And there is only one program that the Department of Energy funds right now, but they are going to be funding this for the next 10 years because the government is all in on EV charging. So what we're doing, we have a project for the New England Conference, the Baltimore Washington Conference, and the Tennessee Western Kentucky Conference. And we've taken the best part of this is we've taken the group of churches, the Department of Energy, not us. So the Department of Energy is doing an analysis on where the government would like to see EV charging in their strategy, which is very different from Wall Street, which is very different from everything else that the EV charging market has to say. And my own personal interest is a project called the Justice 40 Initiative. And the federal government, 40% of all federal infrastructure money is to go to underserved neighborhoods. The partnership that the Department of Energy and the Clean Cities Coalition, that's who's driving the bus for everybody. The Clean Cities Coalition are to serve the underserved. Who better to serve the underserved than the local church? They have a history of it. Their biggest problem right now is outreach. Outreach is something that they struggle with. They can't find the right community partners. Churches have classes in outreach, so it is checking all of the boxes. So we're able to work with the regional Clean Cities coalitions and the Department of Energy to see what the government wants to, and the government will fund the EV chargers on these locations. We've set up a nonprofit to be able to be kind of like the white label and operate it. So there's going to be a revenue share situation that's going to happen. It's developing over time. And we haven't taken you guys yet, but you're next on the list once we get a little further down the road with the Department of Energy. But they are very interested in all of this stuff. And we've been dragged into, just because of the same type of process, is that we've had several conversations with HUD about affordable housing, and they have got a new Office for Faith-Based Initiatives. So basically what we're doing is we're taking the portfolio of churches. HUD is going to review them and see it, but it's not that straightforward. I should probably pump the brakes on that, because it's kind of a hyper local affordable housing thing, but they're very interested in having a relationship to be able to bring funding to faith-based organizations for affordable housing. Just stay tuned, but we're doing the exact same approach. And at that point I said, I have to stop because there's only so much stuff we can do. We've developed a great team of people. We have a bunch of pastors throughout the United States that work with us to be able to help churches shepherd through this whole process. We're pretty excited about the way things go, but the EV charging thing is going to happen. If there was a person within your conference that wanted to be a champion for something like that, there's several things that we can do. We can start working with them immediately to do outreach using the local church. That said, I could talk for a long time, but I think you guys get the highlights of what we do. The cell tower stuff, we've been doing that for 20 years. If your church would be interested in something like that, we could. That's a very straightforward proposition for us to do. The battery storage stuff is developing, but we've started that process down the road. There's a bunch of qualified churches, and we'll see what the utilities can say for that. But EV charging is something that is happening, is going to happen, and the churches are perfect. And it's great for the Park Thrive guys, because we'll have to manage the parking lot as to where the things can go, what they can do. So it's a great fully managed solution that we can bring to the table for churches. And I guess I'll end by saying that when I sit alone and I think about all of this stuff, you know, I think God has uniquely positioned us to take advantage of these opportunities. And we're so pleased and blessed to be able to work with you and your churches and all the other churches that we work with. So I look forward to answering hopefully a bunch of questions from your individual churches.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing. We know that you have worked the last 20 years with the cell phone towers, and it's just beginning with the solar panels and the EV charging stations, and also the battery warehouse. So stay tuned for some of that. But we know it's just now getting off the ground on that, and we're anxious and excited to be a part of that. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing and coming with us tonight. So friends, we've looked at inside the church, we looked at the outside, we looked at the property, cell towers. Let me summarize for a moment and say that if your church has available space inside the building, outside the kitchen, there are several of our churches in the conference that lease their kitchen out to a caterer, as it was mentioned. There are lots of opportunities for rental space in your classroom space or office space that people are looking in some places for a place to meet 1 hour or a day a week, and are willing to pay the church for some of that space. Outside, the parking lot, as we were mentioning, and as the cell tower, as we were mentioning, and other things that Tom was mentioning as well. But also property, and Will and Melissa, Jill and myself are willing to help any church who would like to contact us, and we'll be glad to come to you or work with your board of trustees or your leadership at the church to figure out what is the best solution for your church and your community in order to be in ministry with your community, and at the same time serve the community, but also help the church financially as we move forward into the future. Melissa, anyone else? Jill, anyone else have anything that they would like to share?
Just an appreciation for everyone who joined tonight, and we are certainly learning as we go and trying to resource you the best that we can, and recognizing that really at the end of the day, it comes down to your particular context and your congregation. So any of us on the call tonight would be more than happy to come and meet with your leadership team and really help you explore the next steps.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, friends, for being here. Look for the recording that will be sent out, as well as the Q&A and the resources and the slides that will be coming soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, presenters, very much.